What's going on, guys? Ryan Galloway for LowKick MMA here for the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. Joining me as always, Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We had this card last weekend, UFC Fight Night, Marius versus Sandhagen. A lot of highlights came out of this one, that's for sure. And, there was plenty of impressive fights on the card. I think we'll jump straight in at the top in the main event between Marlon Moraes and Cory Sandhagen. Not the result I was expecting. What do you think?
No, clearly the bookmakers fancied Sandhagen, which I found quite the surprise because Marius has been a long time contender. He's knocked out a bunch of guys, including the last guy to beat Sandhagen, which was Aljamain Sterling. So I just thought they were a bit off, and I just thought Marius wasn't getting the credit he deserved. But obviously they know more than me because Sandhagen come out, he bossed the early goings when Marius is usually his most dangerous. And he just dominated the fight, start to finishing, and then he topped it off with that wheel kick, which was just beautiful. So, all credit to him because it was just something I didn't expect, and it was just flawless performance. And he's right back in the mix now.
Yeah, I expected Marius to be the one coming out throwing wheel kicks and crazy stuff like that and trying to get a finish that way because, like you said, it was a fairly competitive fight for how long it lasted. But I think Sandhagen definitely was getting the better of him, and should the fight have gone later, I think he would have continued to get the better of him. We've seen in the past, Marius' gas tank hasn't really held up too much. So I think Sandhagen would have won had it gone longer as well. But then he throws this wheel kick out of nowhere and puts him away. It was really beautiful wheel kick, looked really impressive, and something that really should do wonders for his highlight reel, and he's shot at getting a title soon.
Yeah, I thought he looked great in the fact that he weren't beating the brakes off Marius or anything, but he was dictating the fight, and you could just tell he was more comfortable in there. He was easily handling Marius, who, as I said earlier, is known for his fast start. He's known to be an explosive, dangerous guy, and he just didn't seem at all fazed by the person that was in front of him, and you could kind of just see something like that was going to happen sooner rather than later. And it was a beautiful kick. It landed perfectly, followed up perfectly. I thought the stoppage was perfect as well. I've seen a few people complaining, and I don't really get it because I thought he was done. It didn't land exactly on the heel, but it landed enough to send him wobbly. And if it landed on the heel, he would have been out cold. He went out cold, but I think he was done by this point. And it's just about who you match Sandhagen up against now. Like, he was speaking that he would accept the bantamweight title shot, of course, but I can't see a world where he actually jumps over Sterling to get it. So you've got to be looking at the Frankie Edgars, the Jose Aldos, the TJ Dillashaw's next for him, and I think they're all big fights he'd be happy to take. And a win against either of them three, I think, gets him a title shot. So he's right there now. It's a very impressive comeback after last time. He didn't look great at all against Sterling, so to come back like this is huge.
If they really want to push Edgar like they were trying to, because you remember initially when Edgar was booked to bantamweight, it was to face Sandhagen. So if they really want to push Edgar, they could give him Sandhagen. But I'll tell you what, I don't favour Edgar in that fight in the slightest. I think that's a really rough fight for Edgar. And to be honest, I really like the Dillashaw fight. I think for Sandhagen to get Dillashaw in his comeback, I know there's a lot of other people that have claim to that fight, I guess, if you want to get into it. I mean, he could even go straight back into a title shot. We just don't know. You got to see what happens with Aljamain and Jan when they fight. But yeah, I think that's the fight I'd like to see him against TJ. I don't really want to see him against Edgar. Aldo, he just lost a title shot, I don't know what you do there. On the other side of this, though, you got Marius, who has that loss to... So he beat Aldo, but everyone thought he lost. He lost to Cejudo before that, so he lost a title shot. And now he's lost here. I just think it's going to be a long road until he's even spoken about in title contention again. But one fight I'd like to see him have would be against Cody Garbrandt. I think that could be a really entertaining fight for both guys. And, if Garbrandt gets past him, that looks fantastic on Garbrandt. And if Marius gets one over on Garbrandt, then it's like he's right there again. He's right at the top of the division, So what do you think?
Yeah, I think Marius he might be thinking about moving up. It just seems like, how does he engineer a title shot from here? He's got a lot of work to do, and at Cody Garbrandt, I don't think he'd be interested in that fight just for the pure sense of it doesn't really benefit him. I don't think beating Marius gets you a title shot anymore. I think Cody Garbrandt's already been guaranteed a title shot at 125, and the talk before was that he also had one set up at 135 as well. So I think when he comes back up to 135, it'll be for an immediate title shot. Marius, I think in the meantime, he needs to be he needs to decide. Obviously, he might go up to 145 and compete there. If he's staying at 135, Pedro Munoz is right there. He's coming off a tough loss. There's a few guys but he probably needs to rack a few, like maybe 3 or 4 wins before he's back in the mix.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but you could give him Cheeto. Cheeto Vera's coming off that win over O'Malley. They're trying to build Cheeto up. If Marius got to be ranked number 6 or 5 or something after this, maybe if you really want to fast track Cheeto to that title shot, you give him Marius. But yeah, there's plenty to do at bantamweight, and I don't like a move up for him, but it's a good segue to this next fight. So you got Marius, who's quite a small guy. He looks big at 35, but then you put him up against some of these guys like Barboza and Admirkani. Like, those are big guys, especially Barboza cutting down to 145. They're just way bigger. And so we'll jump onto that fight, which was just a striking showcase for Barboza. One of his best performances I've seen recently anyway. He got held down for a little bit in the third, but aside from that, it was just flawless.
Yeah, it was. First things first. I'm just glad to see him back in the win column. He's been a bit harshly done by the last few fights. We all seen the decision against Iga, who had 41. The one against Felder was close as well. So it was good from Barboza, because Amir Khani is usually known for flying knees and coming out quite reckless, and he just switched all that off. He was very tactical, and for a while it was the first round was a bit of a dud, but then once Barboza got him, despite this cautious style from Khani, he still got tagged, he still got beat up, he still got hit multiple times. So that just shows you how good Barboza is, and I'm really glad to see him in the win column. And now I feel like, I'm not sure where he'll be ranked, but I feel like he'll jump straight back up to like top 5 contenders now. I don't think he's going to spend too much time having to earn his way to the top. I can see him in a 5-round main event against someone like Max Holloway or someone like Calvin Kattar soon. If they want to take the time with him, maybe match him against someone like Burgos or Yusuf. I just think there's so many options for him right now. I think he looks great at 145. I thought he'd be a bit sucked at the weight, but he looks good to me. And yeah, can't wait.
As soon as I saw this fight finish, I said to one of my friends, I said, you got to match Barboza against Josh Emmett. That's got to be a good fight, right? That's an entertaining one in my opinion. But about this matchup itself, I thought that Amir Khani would be trying to use his grappling a lot more. I thought that, it seemed like that was his plan, but he was just happy to entertain Barboza's striking, which in my opinion is very dangerous for him to do, because we saw Barboza's just a level above him in terms of striking. So I thought we'd see a really grappling heavy approach, which we just didn't see. It's kind of a shame, because if that was going to be his route to victory, that's how we would have done it. But nonetheless, Barboza looked fantastic. He dropped in with that jab twice in the second round. Then in the third round, even after getting wrestled for a couple of minutes, he got back up and dropped in with the jab again. Sorry, the cross, not the jab. But yeah, I just don't know what you do with Barboza after this. If you give him one of those top guys, and if he loses, then it's like he's back to square one. Or if you just build him up slowly and just pace him. Because, he was a top contender at lightweight for a long time. And then he's come down to featherweight, and he's thrown in the deep end in his first one. Controversially lost. A lot of people thought he won. So he's still a top contender. I just don't know what you do.
Yeah, it's just how you go about it. I personally think he beat Iga. I think he beat him quite, obviously in my eyes. So for me, he should be 2-0 at featherweight, and should he be held back by that bad judge's decision, because Jose Aldo wasn't. So what's the difference? The only difference is profile. So I think he's a big enough name where if they want a fight night main event, and you want a featherweight in there, is the guy to go. Calvin Kattar's looking for a fight, and he clearly wants to be a main event fighter now. I think Calvin Kattar against Barboza is a bigger fight than Calvin Kattar against Ig, which also headlined. So I think he'll jump right up the rankings, and expect him to be in a big fight next.
Yeah, a lot of people think that they're going to go the route of the Holloway versus Kattar, but I don't seem to think they'll do that. I think Holloway, if he does fight someone, it's got to be a top 4 guy, right? I can't see them giving Kattar. I feel like it would be the winner of Yair and who's Yair fighting? Zabit. I think it'll be one of those guys, the winners of those fights, Ortega and Zombie. Obviously, next weekend we'll preview that in a little bit. But yeah, I like the Kattar fight for Barboza. I think that'll be a good test for him as well, because we really get to gauge where he's at, especially against a striker like Kattar, who's happy to mix it up on the feet. And, it'd just be an entertaining fight, wouldn't it? So
yeah, and for Kattar, it'd still be the biggest win of his career. Barboza is a huge name. He's bigger than Iga. He's bigger than, who else did he beat? was Shane Burgos he beat as well. So he's a much bigger name than them two guys. So I still think he'd be getting that name he wants, but obviously he's going to call for Max Holloway because Holloway's there. He needs a fight, and Max Holloway is one of the biggest names in the game. So obviously he's got to go for that, but I don't think he's going to get it. And I think Barboza is a good, consolation prize.
Yeah, I agree. We'll jump on to some other fights in the card. One I wanted to pick out real quick before we get into the obvious one was guy from your neck of the woods, Tom Aspinall. He came out there and beat Alan Baudot. Did it pretty convincingly. You showed his full skill set a little bit in this one, and got the TKO a minute 35 in.
Yeah, he looked good again, and I think that's what he's got to be doing to these guys at this point. He weren't happy after the fight. He was shaking his head no, like he annoyed. But that's just the sign of someone who's, a potential champion. He was annoyed that he took a few punches before he knocked someone out within 90 seconds or whatever it was. So, all credit to him. I think I've done a little bit of matchmaking here. I think another guy who was on the card earlier, heavyweight Chris Daukaus. He looks sensational. I think that's a good bit of matchmaking. Thomas Will against Daukaus could be a fun fight. I know he wants that Spivak one, and I know he's not in a rush, so it's gonna be fun watching Tom Aspinall, slowly make his way to the top. I don't want to see him jumping up too quick because it's not what he wants. So I think someone like Daukaus or Spivak is good, and I hope he's back in there soon.
The Spivak fight's interesting because he's not going to get a striker in that one. He's going to get someone who wants to mix it up in the clinch and the grappling and whatnot, which seemingly, I've not seen his old fights, but seemingly on the commentary, they really speak of him highly in his grappling ability. So I wouldn't mind seeing Tom Aspinall go against a wrestler and see how he goes there. But yeah, you can give him a lot of people. There's a lot of those heavyweights in that kind of area that you match him up with. Can't even think of many off the top of my head, but there's plenty there. Well, on the main card, I didn't really see much else worth talking about unless you've got something.
It was Dryskus Duplessis, is it? So I'm going to murder that name. But anyway, I think he was someone we're speaking about because he did have a little bit of hype coming in. 26-year-old South African guy. And he got in there and he looked a bit nervous and he managed to overcome that. Perez seemed to try for one of them Yair Rodriguez back elbows or what, but he just got caught and he just got slept, and it was a perfect one. And the reason I want to speak about Dryskus is mainly because his post-fight speech was quite interesting. And he said, I want to become the first real African champion, kind of taking a shot at Israel Adesanya and taking a shot at Kamaru Usman there, which is interesting because obviously I don't know where they were born, but they are mainly raised in America and New Zealand, is it? So a little bit of a shot. He's fun on the mic. He's 26. He's got a lot of hype behind him, so I think he's one to watch, in the next, coming years and months.
He didn't look too great as the fight started, but obviously as it progressed, he got more comfortable and he did land that big shot. But when I was watching that, it looked like he set it up before that big shot that put him down. He landed something that slowed Perez down because Perez was pushing on him the whole time. And I think it might have been a head kick. He landed something on Perez and Perez just started to take a step back, and that's what led to the exchange where he landed the hook and dropped him. But yeah, it was a pretty solid finish, and if that's his debut, which I think it was, that's a good way to come in here and do that to Marcus Perez. So props to him on that one. We'll jump on to the obvious one that we got to speak about, which was Joaquin Buckley's crazy spinning back kick knockout over Impa Kasanyi. Yeah, speechless. What did you think?
I think it's obviously it's got knockout of the year wrapped up already, but in my opinion, it's probably got knockout of the decade wrapped up already, and that we're only 10 months into it, so that's just that's as big of a statement as I can really make now. I think it's one of the best knockouts you're ever going to see. Heading into this fight, I had picked Buckley, which I know he was an underdog. I thought he looked good against Kevin Holland in his debut. He was clearly unprepared and not ready for it, but he come in, he put on a tough show, and he ultimately got knocked out. But he was there, he was competitive. And then also I thought Impa was getting a bit too much unwarranted hype. I think he looked good against Patolo in his debut, but then people like Darren Stewart had finished him in the first round, so I weren't that impressed. And I think a lot of other people were more impressed with Impa than I was. So I did pick him, but obviously not like this. And I think he's I hope they're just throwing money at him right now, because it was something, last time I seen it was something like 11 million views on Twitter. In terms of that knockout clip, so imagine how much money that translates into for the UFC, and I hope he's getting as much of it as possible, because I don't want to say he's not capable of doing it again, but it is once in a lifetime moment. Even Edson Barboza was only able to get Teddy at him with, that one kick with that picture perfect. So I hope they just throw money at him. I hope he gets a good fight next, and I can't wait to watch him in action because he looked great even before that knockout. I think he was bossing the fight and putting it on Kasanga. So well done to him. I really hope all the best for him.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn because I still think Masvidal's knee on Askren was just something else. But in terms of difficulty to pull off, this is the hardest one by far because the chances that he could get because he wasn't even flat foot on the ground. I don't know how he had the momentum to throw his leg back. He was in the air and he just landed the perfect shot, the button. And what made it perfect was the way the guy fell, the way that Impa fell. It was just... You could tell he was done. His eyes rolled back. His body just fell next. And yeah, it was picture perfect, like you said. And I look forward to seeing him again, but not to see him do a crazy knockout, just because I really want to see him tested. We saw when he fought Holland, he got finished. Pretty brutal finish, that one too. Not as specky, but, just as effective. And I just don't know how he stacks up against these border 15 middleweights, So I would like to see him get someone around that area again and just see how he stacks up, if he can get past it or if he's... not quite cut for that one. But he did look good in this fight, and the finish was something spectacular, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know it was an upset. I'm pretty sure Impa was, considerable favourite going in. He had a bit of momentum. He'd come from Dana White's Contender Series. He'd got a good win in his debut. He looked to be a hard puncher as well. But Buckley just had him on the back from the start, and in terms of his power, seemed to be troubling him, and he was just trying to get out the way, Impa, and then eventually he gets caught with something like that, and he's going to have to watch that for... the rest of his life now. So it was, and he just shout out to Impa because he posted on Instagram and it was all class, it was all grace, it was it was a brilliant response to such a brutal knockout, and I was very glad to see him jump up rather quickly as well because he fell quite scary and he got straight back up. So well done to him as well for taking it like a champ. But it's Buckley's weekend, and you were saying he gained something like 50,000 followers. He made a bunch of money. Like, it's the perfect fight. So, well done to him. You've got to be happy for these guys.
Well deserved, that's for sure. That pretty much wraps up that card for me. You want to jump on to the next one?
Yeah, let's see. Who else have we got? There was some... Well, obviously, we've seen Yusuf Zalal take his first loss, which is,
Yeah.
The guy he faced seemed to be, trouble on the mat. Was able to keep dragging him down. It was a good, fun fight, in terms of just watching someone go full out for the grappling, and then Zalal clearly had the striking advantage. And towards the end, I was shouting at the TV because Zalal, the guy he's fighting, was clearly tired, and Zalal just kept engaging in the wrestling. It was so frustrating to watch. But besides that, as I said earlier, Chris Dawkins got a good one, and then lastly, Tom Breeze got back in the win column, and I think he knocked him out with a jab in the end, wasn't it? So
yeah,
it was a weird night of fights, and we got some crazy knockouts. Just to think that a spinning wheel kick knockout against Marlon Moraes is not the best knockout of the night tells you everything you need to know about this card. And then we've got someone knocking out people with a jab, and the card started with like 4 decisions, so it didn't seem to be going that way, but then it all exploded, and it was a brilliant card in the end.
Absolutely. I mean, if you told me that main event fight was ending with a spinning wheel kick, I would have put money on it being from Marius for sure. But, surprising stuff and good for Sandhagen. I think we'll move on now to this weekend's card, which is UFC Fight Night, Ortega versus Korean Zombie. Awesome fight. Been waiting to see it for a long time. It's been rebooked for the last year. I think it was December last year. It was meant to be in South Korea. Is that right? I think it was in Seoul.
Yeah.
December.
UFC boozing or buzzing, whatever it was.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, that fight's finally happening, we hope. There's one thing that I'm not up to... I don't think this fight's going to happen until I see them in the octagon, right? And especially because Hannah Gracie tested positive for COVID, who's Brian Ortega's head coach, jiu-jitsu coach, and he's no longer flying over with him to take the fight. But he had COVID and went through it, came back negative, and now he's come back positive, and then he's come back negative against today. So let's all pray that Ortega hasn't got it himself, and we finally get to see this fight.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Abu Dhabi is they tend to the testing before they even get on the plane, so you're getting warning that someone might pull out, a week in advance. Whereas sometimes in Vegas they seem to test positive on the night or the day before. So I do think it's a better way of controlling the environment and how many people are going to actually pop. I think once in Saudi Arabia, the likelihood of them popping is quite unlikely. So hopefully it's okay. It seems to be going that way, and I'm very glad to see Brian Ortega back. Finally, I think it's been about 2 years now. So I'm very interested to see what he comes back like. But it's hard not to pick Korean Zombie in this one for me because he's been active. He's been winning. I think he looked good. Other than getting caught with an elbow in the last second against Yair Rodriguez, he's on a long win streak besides that. So I've got to pick him in this one. Brian Ortega's been away. I don't know what he's been doing. So I'm just interested more than anything to see how he looks.
I am the opposite. I'm taking Ortega in this one, and I'll tell you why. He's had that loss to Holloway. He got smashed. There's no denying it. He just got outdone in that one. He claims he couldn't use his grappling because of an injury in his leg or something, but how factual that is, we don't know. But regardless of that, he got beaten in that fight, and before that, he's looked pretty perfect. Some of his fights, he'll get beaten up, and then he finds some finish. Look at the Swanson fight. He was like, I wouldn't say he was losing on the feet, but he was taking some shots. As soon as he got into clinching range, he grabbed onto the neck, and he locked up an anaconda choke. If there was 20 seconds longer, 15 seconds longer in that first round, he would have got the tap then. Comes back to the feet. Same kind of scenario happens. He puts Cub on the cage and he chokes him out unconscious with the guillotine. And I think that's going to be what he's going to look to do in this fight, right? He's going to look to clinch with Korean Zombie and look for a choke. Because if he sits there and does a kickboxing match against Korean Zombie, he's going to lose. Let's be honest. He seems to have improved in his striking. He's got a whole new set of coaches. His only returning coach is Henna, but that's his jiu-jitsu coach. And maybe having Henna not in his corner might be at his disadvantage, not morally, what's the word? Like mentally, not having his best friend and his coach in his corner. But let's hope not. Let's hope he comes in his best form. And I think at his best form, he can beat Korean Zombie. And I expect it'll be by submission.
Well, it's interesting because when people take a couple of years off, it's usually because of injury. But I'm not sure what type of injuries he's had, and I think he's been waiting to get back in there for a while now. So I hope he's been working on stuff, and obviously the Max Holloway defeat is a tough one to take because it's not like Max was unbeatable because we've seen Volkanovski go on and do that. So he'll be hopefully he's been working on stuff, but I think his way to victory is what you just said. He's got to grab onto something. I think he's got to withstand the early storm from Korean Zombie. He's got to be able to take the power, and then eventually he's just got to grab onto something and try and drag this fight to the mat. But I think we've seen Zombie is a good jiu-jitsu guy himself because he pulled off a twister back in the day, didn't he? So it's an interesting fight. It's one we've been waiting for so long, and I'll be very excited once it actually comes to fruition. And then once it's over, finally it's over. Let's move on and let's get these both guys active again, fighting other people, and probably the winner of this goes to a title shot. So very interesting times, very high stakes.
Yeah, and I went back today and I watched a bunch of their fights, both guys. And one thing that struck to me was Korean Zombie fighting Jose Aldo. And that was his last 5-round fight from memory that went full 5 rounds, or went 4 rounds. And the big thing I noticed in that, the first round he came out and he was very, very reserved. He wasn't explosive like he had been previously. And him and Aldo kind of just traded back and forth. Aldo seemed to be getting the better of him. But by the 3rd round, Aldo could take him down at will. He had nothing in the terms of wrestling to stop Aldo from taking him down. So I think if we get to the 3rd round, and Ortega could probably take him down and find a submission there, he's going to be very dangerous in those initial goings, though. I mean, look at what he did to Frankie Edgar. He caught Frankie Edgar, dropped him, almost finished him. Edgar back to his feet, dropped him again, finished him. Not that you can't say the same for Ortega. Ortega finished Edgar as well, but I think that Korean Zombie did it more decisively and in more impressive fashion. I'm excited for this fight. I'm taking Ortega, but I'm not counting Korean Zombie out. I think he can definitely win this one, and it'll be interesting to see.
Well, the last time we seen Ortega, he was the easiest man to hit in the world. He was like, a Homer Simpson, just getting punched in the face and eating everything. And with all due respect to Max Holloway, he's not the biggest puncher, so you can afford that. Korean Zombie's one of the biggest punchers at 145, so how does Ortega stand up to that? Can he be eating punches? How long can he take them for? And then once he's done that, can he come back and still be at top of his game in terms of jiu-jitsu and dragging this fight to the mat? I do think it is a tale of, he should be getting it done down the wire, whereas Zombie will want to get it done early. But I just don't like it when guys go away for so long and then you come back, and I just never feel confident in picking them. So as much as I am a massive Ortega fan, and I hope he does well on his Saturday, is it? So I hope he does well, but it's a tough ask to come back into this fight. I think he could have come back into an easier fight, and it just shows you what a game guy he is. But it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy night. So I am going Korean Zombie, but good luck to both men.
Absolutely. Let's hope we just see the fight. That's the main thing. Aside from this, on the card, we got a couple of big fights on here. I mean, the one that strikes me straight away is Caitlyn Chukagian versus Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade's first move up to bantamweight or is it flyweight? It's flyweight. Move up to flyweight. Yeah. Flyweight, and she's taking on number 1 ranked contender. So she gets a win here. I'm assuming it's straight into a title shot next. What do you think of this fight?
Yeah, I think it's a great fight. I think it's a good move for Andrade as well, because I think she was competing at 135 for a while, I think. She was competing at 135 for a while, I think, against the bigger girls, and she was struggling. And then she was at 125. But anyway, she was up high, and then she moved down, and she looked great. But then when you get finished like that by the champ, where'd you go from there? Like, there's no real route back to a title shot. Even if she beat Rose last time out, I don't think she was getting another shot. So I think this is the move, and I think flyweight is wide open. I think Jessica Andrade, in terms of contenders for that title against Valentina, she's a cut above the rest. I think she's better than Caitlyn Chukagian. I think she's better than the JoJo Calderwoods and Jennifer Myers. I think she is a level above it. So I'd be very happy to see her get a win here and challenge Valentina, because I think it'd be her toughest test in a while. I think she'd put it on her, and it'd be a great fight.
I expect to see Andrade finish Chukagian in this, but it really depends on which Chukagian we get, right? Because she's been the striker in the past, and then in her last fight, she was the grappler and just demolished Antonina Shevchenko. But you can't really compare Andrade with Antonina Shevchenko. They're on different levels in both their striking and their grappling. And I think if Chukagian decides to take Andrade down, Andrade's probably pretty comfortable there, because she does have decent jiu-jitsu, and I don't know if she really wants to be doing that. But on the feet, I expect to see Andrade land something big and put her away. I want to say early, but who knows in this one.
Yeah, I expect her to get her. I do think Caitlyn's a really good fighter. I just think there is levels to this game, and I think that 125 division, there's just, she's obviously you can do that against someone like Shevchenko, Antonia Shevchenko, but there is a couple of levels that she needs to get to be at Jessica Andrade's level, in my opinion. I think Jessica Andrade's been a contender for so long. I don't think she's actually fought a flyweight before, so I do think this is kind of the perfect weight for her, because she is so big, she is so strong. I think there was even some complaints that she's too big and strong for strawweight, and people were, complaining. Even fighters were complaining about how big she was. So this is kind of a perfect middle ground. The flyweight division's quite new. 135 is too big, 115 is too small. Let's see how she does. I think this is a perfect weight, and I think we're going to see her look better than ever.
Let's hope so. We've got a couple of good fights in here, but before I move down the lineup, I just want to point out Cyril Gaines fighting in the co-main event against Ante Delija. I don't know who that is, so I'm not going to focus on him at all. But I'm super keen to see Cyril Gaines again. Very interesting heavyweight, because he's not this one-shot power puncher. He's more of like a volume striker, and he's got that grappling background as well. He pulled off that heel hook in his last fight. I think it was one before. But he pulled off that heel hook. He's a really well-rounded fighter, so I'm excited to see him back in again.
Yeah, I hear the hype all the time about Cyril Gaines. I'm not too sold on him yet. I want to see him moving through the ranks. I guess this guy's a UFC debutant, just because I've never heard of him before as well. So I think this is going to be a showcase fight, and then he's going to move on. And I heard someone saying online, Gain against Aspinall would be a good fight as well. So I want to see him taking them steps up. I know he's got the Tanner Bosa win on his record, but you want to see progression. You want to see people pushing forward, not taking these steps back. So hopefully he can get a nice win here. Probably a viral knockout or a viral submission, something like that, and then onto big names. And heavyweight isn't the most stacked division, so as we were saying about Aspinall before, he wants to take his time. That's fair enough, but at some point you've got to take the jump. And once you beat Arlovsky, as we've seen, you beat Arlovsky and then you beat someone else, and then you're top 5. So it's not that hard to be a heavyweight contender, and I want to see him go through the ranks quickly. I think he's talented enough. He's 30 years old, so he's not like he's too young. MMA's just come to France as well, so he's a guy who could potentially headline in a Paris event or somewhere like that. So I want to see him make a statement and then move on.
Hey, you said something there that really I agree with. I didn't even think of it. Aspinall versus Gain makes a lot of sense because Aspinall just beat his training partner. I don't know if you noticed. Cyril Gain was in the corner of that fight. Aspinall just won. So that's a good storyline. They can start working there. Cyril Gain gets a win here. Even if he gets a loss here, you do the Aspinall versus Gain fight. I like that. But yeah, otherwise on the card we've got Australian Jim Croot versus Modescus Bakauskis, who we saw him his last fight. He looked pretty good in that one. And Jim Croot in his last fight, I think he pulled off a submission. I can't remember which one. Maybe it was a Kimura. But he got to win his last fight as well. So these two guys both coming off wins. Really excited to see this one.
It's a really good fight. It reminds me of the Zalal fight from the weekend where it's two really young guys. I think Croot's 24, Modescus is about 25, maybe 26 now, but he's still very young himself. I think Modescus is getting a tough introduction to the UFC. They're not giving him easy fights. I thought Michailidis, he was really well, fancied from Greece. I think he was in Europe, and it was a much tougher fight than he was originally anticipated to have. And now he goes straight to Jimmy Croot, and then once you beat Jimmy Croot, where'd you go from there? It just seems to me like you fringe top 15 then, and obviously I'm picking Modescus. He's one of our guys, but not only that, is that he looks sensational as late. I haven't seen anything from his game that tells me that he's going to lose this one. He looked perfect last fight. He's very explosive. He's got all this power. He told me I think he's going for a second round knockout, so I'd go with that. But Jimmy Croot's a serious guy himself, and he's 24, and he'll be thinking the same thing. He'll be thinking, I can beat this guy who's got all this hype. He's a Cage Warriors champion. He's come in. He's got a brilliant knockout. If I beat him, then I'm fringe top 15, and he's already got wins over Paul Craig and Sam Alvey. So he's probably beat better guys than Modescus has. So he'll fancy himself coming into this one. It's a really good fight, and I do love it when they match two young contenders against each other because let's see. And they can always do this fight again down the line. There's no reason why whoever loses in this fight won't come back and get towards the title when the other guy's holding the title. So it's just I love these fights, and I think it's a great fight to have on the card.
I'm taking Jimmy Croot in this one just because he's only his sole loss on his record. He's been perfect otherwise from the Peruvian necktie he got caught in against Misha Serkinov. And that's he was winning that fight for that whole round that it went for until he got caught in that submission. So to me, it seems like a bit of bad luck. However, I haven't seen much of Modescus Bakauskis, but in his last fight, he looked really good. So I don't know who's going to win this one because both guys are so good, and I haven't seen his record. Is Modescus got losses, or is he on a win streak, or what's the situation?
I think he's got a couple. I think it's like 10-2, 11-2, but it's right. When you're this young, you're going to take these losses. So I think anyone who's going back and watching Modescus Bakauskis from three years ago is not watching Modescus Bakauskis. You're watching a shadow of himself, And I'm sure it's the same with Jimmy Croot. When they're this young and they're developing this fastly, every fight it's a new fighter basically. So I wouldn't even consider them losses as sudden. Just go and watch his last few performances in Cage Warriors. He was handling wrestlers. Everyone was coming to wrestle him, and he's handling easily, and then he's getting the knockouts as well. So this is what you want to see, and I think it's the same for Jimmy. He'll be wanting, that fight was a couple losses ago, so it is more. I mean, a couple of fights ago, so it is more relevant. It is UFC caliber, but I do think they're just good. This is just going to be the best versions of themselves, and they'll go on and be even better. So it's a great fight.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this one. Is there any other fights on the card you want to touch on, or we'll jump into some news?
So where have we got? Is Thomas Almeida back? So Thomas Almeida's back, which is we haven't seen him for nearly 3 years now.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. He seems to have moved up to featherweight. At one point he was very highly touted. He was he's considered to be the next guy at 135, and then Cody Garbrandt got his hands on him, and then a couple more losses after that. But he's an interesting one, especially at 145. And then we've got the I'm terrible with name, but Mateus Gamrot. He was the KSW champion who's got a bit of hype. I think he was a double champion going in, so he's got some hype behind him. Julian Robinson's on the card, who are quite like, and then also James Krause, who has again stepped up at the last minute as an acceptor fight as well. So it's a good card, and I think obviously the main event is far and away the best fight on the card, but you've got some good, interesting fights on the undercard, a bit of mix of old timers and new prospects. It's a good card.
Yeah, and one fight I will point out before we move on is Jamie Malarkey from Australia. I think he's from Sydney, from memory, or Melbourne, from over east. He's taking on Fares Ziam. Not sure who that is, but in Jamie Malarkey's last fight was at the Adesanya vs Whitaker card, 243, or I don't know, whatever one that one was, and he fought Brad Riddell, and it was just a 3-round war, and both guys were exhausted and bloody. It was an awesome fight. So hopefully we see something very similar here, or he gets a spectacular knockout. Who knows? But that's a name to watch out for on this card. But with that, I think we'll jump on to some news. And what have I got here? 1 second. Just pulling up the website. Michael Chandler's still open to fight Tony Ferguson at UFC 254. Obviously, one thing that has been in the news since we last spoke was what's his name? Islam Makhachev lost his opponent. RDA had to pull out because of COVID, and he was calling out Michael Chandler for that fight. He was also calling out Tony Ferguson. Ali said he would give Ferguson $200,000 if he beat Islam Makhachev. What do you think? Is Tony going to fight at UFC 254? Is there any chance Tony fights at UFC 254? Or do you think Chandler and Islam could be a fight to make?
I don't think he will fight it at 254. He's a madman, and I'm sure he's capable of doing it. But because he's coming back now, and he seems to want to, I don't know, he just wouldn't accept that Chandler fight. So it doesn't make sense to accept Makhachev. Or I just don't. I think he's going to struggle to get opponents. This guy, because he is really talented, but his name doesn't really hold any weight in that lightweight division, Makhachev. So I don't even think Chandler will be too interested in that fight either. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep him on the card. And but I think Chandler against Ferguson is still an interesting fight if they can come to terms on the money. And I think that's the more likely fight down the road. For that, it's going to be interesting to see if they can save that Makhachev on that card.
Yeah, because I feel like, let me look at his record real quick. So Makhachev, I feel like he's already fought Beneil Dariush. So that was the fight I was going to recommend. Let me just quickly here. But yeah, for him to lose RDA, that was a huge fight for him, because RDA doesn't really need to be taking on these up-and-comers like that. He can come down and fight a bigger name. But he was going to have that fight, and obviously he's lost that opponent. Doesn't look like he's fought Beneil Dariush. Maybe that's a good fight for him there. I know he wanted Charles Oliveira. That was another one he's asked for. Dan Hooker. But these guys aren't going to fight him. They're top 5 guys. Like, they're going to keep their place. Not going to take the risk. Whereas Beneil Dariush, I feel like that's a good fight. And who knows who wins that one? I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I've got respect for Makhachev, but I just feel like for him to be going in with Michael Chandler's and Tony Ferguson, it just, in what way do them two fighters benefit from facing him? The best name on his record, just looking at it now, is probably Gleison Tebow. He's got Nick Lentz on there, Davi Ramos from his last fight. So I don't think he's a guy with a lot of hype behind him, but he's just not there yet. So I think he needs to be, facing the guys like Dariush or the loser of Drew Dober's next fight against Ferreira or someone like that. He needs to he does need that signature win. It's a similar place he's in as Chimaev's in. Is why would these top names want to fight this guy? And it's a tough spot, and it's going to be hard to replace whoever. He might end up fighting a debutant on that card. That's more likely to me than him facing Ferguson or Chandler.
Hey, we'll talk about Chimaev while we're on the subject of it. And your boy Darren Till offered to fight Chimaev if he gets past Jack Hermanson. I think even if he loses to Manson, like Chimaev seems like a more realistic fight in that case. What do you think of Darren Till calling him out, and how would you see that fight going?
I think it's it's not that he wouldn't do it. It's just an empty call out though, because the plan is to fight Chimaev. The thing is, he's struggling to get an opponent for his November. I think he's meant to be fighting in Vegas, so Darren Till's not fighting to December. So it's nice that he would fight him, and I'm sure he would fight him, but it's not really solving the problem we've got. He needs an opponent for right now, not next year. So I'm sure once he beats someone like in a main event, he's not going to struggle to get an opponent because then he'll be ranked and people will want to fight him. So Darren Till's just throwing his name out there, staying relevant. I think he was calling everyone out the other day, so I'm not surprised Chimaev gets it as well. But yeah, I think it'd be a fun fight, and I think it'd be a tough fight for Chimaev. You know, obviously he's been able to take everyone down, but Darren Till showed no signs of he's an easy man to take down. He's huge, and he pops straight back up when people have been taking him down. So it'd be a good fight, but it doesn't solve the problem we've got. I think right now the UFC needs to, you know, be calling everyone. But the problem is that because they've put him in a main event slot, they can't put him against someone like Alex Cowboy Oliveira, who's called him out, because that's not a main event fight, is it? So they need someone, you know, I was suggesting the other day, maybe someone like Kelvin or Woodley, someone who's coming off a losing streak, who probably isn't worthy of main event in the card right now, but can get all their, you know, power back by beating Chimaev. That's the way I think they're going to have to go with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I have no clue, to be honest. I just don't understand this little mess at welterweight where Leon Edwards won't fight Wonderboy. Wonderboy wants to fight Edwards, he won't fight Chimaev. The Leon Edwards wants to fight Masvidal. Masvidal won't fight Leon Edwards. You know, like there's just all these storylines that are going nowhere. Whereas you got this guy Chimaev, it'll just take anyone, but no one wants to fight him. I think his moves at middleweight here. I think he's got more chance of getting a top 10 guy at middleweight than at welterweight. Don't know why. Just seems more likely to me. And I think it's going to be a Brunson or a Gaslam's another good one if he's ready to come back. Yeah, Derek Brunson seems to me like I feel like that'd be a really tough challenge and a good fight for him. Not that I know if Brunson wants to take that fight or not.
I don't think he will. I think anyone who's on a winning streak, like Brunson's just coming off one of the biggest wins of his career. He knocked out, you know, a contender who was I think he was a big favourite to beat him. So, I don't think he's going to want that. You're going to have to go for one of these guys who've kind of got nothing to lose at the minute. I just think Kelvin, he's on how many losing streak is it? A 3-fight losing streak now. He hasn't looked good, and he needs that bit of shine. You're going to put Kelvin in a main event slot right now. And I think Kelvin could deal with him. I think he could, you know, resist the wrestling and you know, potentially beat him on the feet as well. So I think it's someone you need to get who's maybe a bit down on the luck, lost a few fights, but still has a name. I think you need that name because I'm sure there's a lot of guys who want to fight Chimaev, but they're not guys worthy of main eventing. So it's a tough spot, and the UFC have made the bed, and they've kind of got to lie in it now. They've got to go and grab a name and try and put a main event on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Maybe they wait until after the when's Silver fighting Hall? That's going to be in a couple of weeks, right? Maybe he gets the winner of that or the loser of that. But I don't think if Silver loses that he's going to turn around. I think that might be it for him. But I don't know what goes on there. Welterweight's a mess right now. I wouldn't be able to tell you what they do in that division. The biggest news that I think of was that Leon Edwards wouldn't fight Wonderboy for some reason. But obviously Wonderboy wants that fight. What do you think Leon Edwards does? Who does he fight? He wants a title shot. He's not getting a title shot. There's no chance. He wants that Masvidal fight. He's not getting that fight. What does he do?
It's tough now. Like obviously I'm a Leon Edwards fan. He's from England. I root for him all the way. But at some point, I think Wonderboy is a worthy name for Leon Edwards. I think if he beat Wonderboy, it'd be the best win of his career. So for me, as someone who is a fan of Edwards, I'm kind of, you know, egging him on to go and get that fight now, because why wouldn't you want to fight Wonderboy? I know he wants these big money fights and he wants them, but what are you going to do? Sit out forever and just not fight? I hate that, and I just want to see him fight, and I don't get why you wouldn't want to fight Wonderboy. I think it's a great fight. I think it's worthy of being a main event on a fight night card, and I get that, you know, saying, you know, matching up against Chimaev, either of them guys, I think that's disrespectful to even consider that. But matching them up against each other, he's fighting down the rankings and he wants to fight up. But Wonderboy is a title contender, a 2-time title contender. He took Woodley all the way twice, drew with him once, didn't he? So I don't understand what more he wants. If Masvidal's fighting Covington, Gilbert Burns is fighting Usman, apparently. Who else are you going to fight? I don't know.
I think you could still do that Woodley versus Edwards fight, right? I would still watch that fight. And it's a very dangerous fight for Edwards, in my opinion, even though Woodley hasn't looked his best lately. I just don't think he'd be interested. If he's not interested in Wonderboy, who's coming off a win, like, why would he want to fight Woodley, who's coming off a loss? Not that he said he wants to, but I just don't know what you do. I just don't know what Leon does, because He needs to move. If he doesn't fight, he's going to keep decaying. He's going to move down the rankings, and then his title shot's going to be way in the review. Because you got to think, if Covington gets past Masvidal, or even if Masvidal gets past Covington, the winner of that is going to get the shot after Burns and Usman. Like, there's no way they don't. Do you agree with me? Do you think that UFC goes for the winner of that fight? Should they make it?
Yeah, I think it's the fights. The two huge stars. Covington against Usman's a huge fight. If Masvidal is able to beat Covington, then that's another huge rematch. So Leon Edwards is, sitting on the sidelines, and I know he's been unlucky that the fact that he did have that fight against Woodley, and then since then 2 more people have beat Woodley. So if he got that fight and won him, then and then beat him at that point, it would have been, he would have been next in line, but he hasn't. And things haven't worked out like that. So at some point, you've just kind of got to accept what's going on and get back in there. And it's I'm sure there's other stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, but Gilbert Burns is in the position he's in right now just from fighting, and that's all you've got to do. You've got to keep fighting, build momentum, and all his momentum's gone now. Any idea that Leon Edwards might be a star of welterweight is gone because he hasn't fought in I don't know how long. So his biggest win is Rafael dos Anjos, who a lot of people have beat as of late, especially at 170. So I don't understand what his case is and what he thinks his case is for a title shot, and he still rejected the title shot. So he's had the offer. What more does he want? It's tough being a Leon Edwards fan. I still am. I hope he fights Wonderboy, because I think that's the fight, and I think he'd get immense credit because Wonderboy is still very, very dangerous, and he's dangerous for anyone. So stepping in there with Wonderboy is still a tough ask for anyone.
Absolutely. And I'd be keen to see that fight, or any fight for Leon Edwards. I just want to see him fight again because, like you said, it's been a while. And, I mean, you think about it. How many times has Woodley fought since Leon Edwards fought? 3 times now? 4 times, maybe? He's fought quite a lot, and so Edwards needs to make a move, otherwise he's going to lose his spot in line. That's all I had in news. Is there anything else you have before we wrap it up?
What else we got? Oh, did you see all the Mike Perry stuff? Did we speak about that?
Which Mike Perry stuff?
All is gone.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think we spoke about it. We can talk about that. I saw that though.
He's a funny guy. I don't know if this is even allowed. Like, can you do that? Like, if you can do that, I feel like it's gonna be the new normal. Like, everyone's gonna be auctioning off their corner places. So he's just a interesting guy, and it was just like, for me as a writer, it was funny to be reporting on this stuff all week. You go from all this stuff all week, and then you get the serious stuff on the weekend when people are literally getting their heads nearly kicked off. But it was funny because it was him shouting out, then obviously you've got Till trolling him saying I'll pay, and then it goes from Till trolling to Till serious, and then there's a Just Giving page or whatever it was, a GoFundMe, and then a porn star jumps in, and an NFL players jump in. It's just it's a fun time to be an MMA journalist and MMA writer, but yeah, it's going to be interesting if that actually comes off, because I don't think it'd be the worst idea if to have Darren Till in your corner. It can't be worse than having your girlfriend in your corner, unless like the fight in between rounds. But besides that, I'm sure Darren go and give him some good advice. And Robbie Lawler must just be sitting at home, just shaking his head, going like, "Why am I fighting this guy? I was the champ a few years ago, and now I'm here." So it's a funny side note, but very interesting to see if the UFC actually let him do that.
Yeah, and the best tweet was when Darren Till, after he said he was serious and he wanted to corner my player, he was like, how much are you going to pay me to throw in the towel? Imagine he was in the corner and he threw in the towel. That'd be crazy theatre. I don't see that happening. But yeah, it will be interesting because they do have to license the cornerman. The corner people have to go through like vetting. They don't just let anyone in their corner. So if they're going to let an adult film star in his corner like the one company asked for, it's like, what's the criteria to become a cornerman? But who knows? I'd be interested to see it. So hopefully we get to see Darren Till in his corner for sure. Is that everything you had, or?
Yeah, but then if he's able to do this and he actually auctions off his corner, just imagine how much someone like John Jones would get. He could still have 2 cornermen who he knows and trusts. Then that third spot could just go to the highest bidder, some random guy who bids probably like $1 million to make it happen. Weird situation we're in. I hope, like, we didn't see Dana speak at the weekend, did we? So I hope when he actually does finally speak out, someone asks him about that and sees if that's actually a possibility. Because right now everyone's getting carried away with himself. Darren Till, I don't know how much he's got in that GoFundMe, but he had a few grand last time I checked. So he's gathering the money, and that's apparently going to Mike Perry. But Dana White might shut it down next time he opens his mouth. So interesting, but that's everything in terms of news from me.
Yeah, so we'll remain to see how that one goes. I'm sure they will talk about it during this week's build-up for the event. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you after all these fights to recap the action. Until then, see you later.